had been here for a while, but there was really no concept of groups, happening here at that time. In fact, I think it was kind of like a firm no that like couldn't happen, which is just interesting looking at it now. And then we moved over to Pat Valley Pub. That lasted a good, 3 meetings maybe. It was a pretty cool venue, but that's a rowdy bunch in there, and you couldn't really hear our presentations. And then happily we landed at the E-Factory, where we've been ever since, and they've graciously put us up, almost always in the EKD room or Cox. We've had 2 conference events. These have been really cool stuff. The first one was the Mozilla Developer Roadshow that we had upstairs. And there's kind of core team members of Mozilla that would travel around the world doing presentations related, obviously, to a lot of Mozilla stuff. But it was really cool to have them here. We had some people from Tulsa come down and give some presentations. And I think we had over 100 people at this event, and that was kind of the first kind of bigger thing that we did. And we had a big taco bar, and it was fun. That was a really cool event. 27,000 YouTube watches, pretty much thanks to this one right here. 22,000. Brandon Cash did a really cool modern developer presentation, and I think the title is just so buzzwordy that like people just gravitated. And I mean, look at his face. Like, why are you not going to watch that? You gotta watch that handsome fella. So, anyways, this is a really exciting time. We kind of wanted to take a step up and do more, right? So we've kind of been self-funded this entire thing. Meetup allows you to donate. We've had quite a few people send donations, and that's really appreciated. That's really cool when that happens. It goes directly into my bank account, which is weird because just tax reasons. There's all these weird transactions, and like we've had people come up occasionally and try to give money from like O'Reilly and stuff like that. And it's like, who can we cut a check to? I don't think you can cut one to Myke Bates. I think that'll be a little weird, like on your accounting stuff, and definitely on mine. So that's kind of a no. And so we've always wanted to do more and do bigger stuff. And so to do that, we decided that we'd get rid of that little word right there and drop web out of the equation and broaden this group's topic to simply development altogether. So this group is now officially Springfield Devs. Yeah! If you're only a web person and you're like, I only came to this group because it was just web, don't worry, there will still be a lot of web topics covered in here. But anytime we kind of wanted to touch on other stuff, like when we did the mobile framework shootout, that kind of touched in some gray areas. So yeah, we specifically did like hybrid frameworks and stuff that still dealt almost exclusively in web, but like getting into mobile and in other areas like this is something that we've always wanted to do. And so feel like it's kind of time to drop that guardrail and widen this out a bit. So this means a few things, and all of which we do not have fully worked out, but we figured we kind of need to get this cat out of the bag and really start ironing out some of these details. So, what does this mean for you beloved attendees? First of all, we're almost officially a nonprofit entity. There's just some last little steps there. Jason Klein kindly pointed that out to me today. Buzzkill.
He does that.
He does do that. So this is going to be like the legit deal. We're going to have board members and all that kind of stuffy horse shit like that. But we're also going to seek to get a lot more organized in what we're doing, and that also means that we'll be asking for more volunteers for events and stuff like this. And you can, if you're interested in that, details will come out about those topics. So if that's anything you're interested in, feel free to flag me down tonight, and we can kind of, keep you in mind, because that will become a lot more formal process moving forward. We've got a few key people in here that help out quite a bit. We got one sitting right here. Where's David at? Sorry, I'm happy with the laser. Watch yourself. Broader range of topics, like I said, so touching on mobile stuff, to data stuff, to you name it, right? It's all going to be covered. Another thing that I've really been wanting to do that is going to happen is we will start doing beginners kind of agenda. So that's always been a struggle in here. I'm sure many of you have been to sessions where like it's just way too deep and way too broad. And we've always kind of wanted to have that at the beginner level. And it's just finding that balance of that stuff. And so we're aiming to have something like a 6-month rotating agenda of beginner level topics from like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like no knowledge required to step into these sessions, right? And then we'll kind of just keep rotating that, and then hopefully you can take people who have gone through that and encourage them to help teach those topics as well. So, the website, if you've ever been to the website, you know that it's nothing special, which is crazy for a web development group. But yeah, it's basically just a page with some links on there. We will have a very robust website, specifically with the directory. We've got a very large talent base in this group, and it makes no sense not to be kind of cataloging everyone's skill sets and being able to, you know, flag yourself as for hire, freelance, all these type of things. So this is going to take a little bit. We're working on some designs and stuff right now, but I would say probably early next year. You know, look forward to that rolling out. This is the big one: single night, multiple meetups. So we had a lot of groups in town, and we thought, man, this would be a really good opportunity to kind of converge the night that these groups meet on. I don't know about y'all, but it's kind of hard to get out like every night of the week. And so this is an attempt to solve this. We'll talk about a little bit more of this later. Larger events. So like we had the Mozilla event and that kind of stuff. Really want to apply a lot more focus on having big events like that. Dues and sponsorships. So let's talk about it. First of all, our sponsors. These are our very first founding sponsors of Springfield Devs. Please give a round because they bought all this stuff together. I know it can be kind of pain to like see sponsorship details all the time, but it is going to become the lifeblood of how we kind of grow this group. And so we're going to get a bit more formal about that. Oftentimes, before we have presenters get up, one of the sponsors from a company may step up, say a few words about their company, especially if they're hiring, right? They're interested in this group probably because of that specific reason. So we feel like that's a mutual benefit there. But yeah, these three are the first ones. The way we're treating founding sponsors is we have kind of a window of time here where anybody who gets in this founding sponsors will forever be recognized on places like the website. So they will have a permanent home of being a company who helped this group become bigger. So if you have a company and this sounds like something you may be interested in, or you work at a company and this sounds like something you think they may be interested in, we are going to be sending out some links to read more about this and find out how to get in that action. On the flip side, talking about dues to be part of this group, I'm happy to announce that they're not required. So this is something that we feel really passionate about. I mean, it takes money to do this stuff, but from the beginning, we never wanted a cost to be associated with learning and coming together in an environment like this. So dues will never be required. End of story. Donations are happily accepted, and there will be more formal details on this to come out later, so if you feel so inclined to donate, please. But like we're doing with founding sponsors, we're also doing founding members. So if you as a member really feel like you want to support this group and receive some mutual back scratching there, or some stuff that we'll see here, right here. So if you want some swag, we will have these details coming out tonight as well on Slack. We're not ready to take that payment just at this exact moment, but fill out the form, we'll have your details, and I mean within, I would say a week or two, like we'll have all this information. And specifically with this, so you'll choose, what kind of cut of shirt you want, and if you want a mug, why wouldn't you want a mug? And there's a couple of deadlines for this. So the way we decided to roll this out is we didn't want to keep this window open forever because that founding concept, has a bit of novelty to it, and we want to keep it that way. So we're basically running this to the end of the year and dispersing it twice. So if you really want it, you're itching to get in there, the October meeting, get your information in from the form we'll send out by September 18th, and you'll have your stuff at the October meeting. Then we'll do one more in the January meeting, and then get it in by Christmas, right? And then you'll have your January delivery. So that's pretty fun. The mugs are going to be awesome. The shirts are going to be great. So the single night, multiple meetups. How's this going to work? We're figuring it out. It is an evolving process, and it would be silly to think that there won't be any speed bumps along the way. So we're going to meet in the main room, like always, and have our food and drinks and talk about what's happening in the world and whatnot. Socialize, food, intro, and then we'll split out into groups. So the way that this will tentatively work is the meetup, the way we're going to split this out isn't totally determined yet, but you'll have a good idea of what the presentations are ahead of coming in here. So you'll already be able to plot, like, yeah, I think I want to go to that one. We may do something where each person gets up for like 2 minutes and gives like a really quick pitch of what they're going to do, and we have a little bit better understanding, and then we're going to divvy out into rooms. The E-Factory is happy about this idea because it really helps them schedule stuff as well. And so they're blocking off pretty much all of the rooms for us on those nights, and so we'll be able to break out into a lot of different areas. They'll still be recorded as they are now, and they'll get posted up to YouTube. So if there's one you're really torn, right? Don't worry, you can catch it online, a day or two after. So those groups that are joining this family officially right now is the Springfield.net user group and the AWS group. Hell yeah! These two groups, man, I always want to get out, but like I said, I have that thing where I just can't get out every night, and so like personally, I would think it would be awesome to be able to attend all of these. So. We hope this continues growing. Obviously, we're going to feel it out and see how this works. We'll learn from mistakes and smooth it out. And if there's more groups interested in joining, we will make that happen. I hear a rumor of some JavaScript stuff coming up in the works. Web devs is no longer just web devs. We're Springfield devs, so there is some gap to be filled there if anybody wants to do just web-specific stuff. Anyways. The October meeting. So October is when we will start this new format and sort of figure it out. So Springfield Devs is going to have Marcus Pope present on Blazor. And this is a really interesting technology if you're at all into any C# or .NET stuff and don't really like JavaScript, but still want to know how to do things like single-page apps. That's going to be really cool to see. .NET, Franklin's presenting, yeah, on building extensions with VS Code. A lot of people using VS Code now. Pretty sick editor. And cloud networking, an enthralling topic at AWS.
That's right.
Again, evolving process, right? So please come and be there. It's going to be awesome. So, I mean, that kind of wraps up the announcement of what is to come now of the Web Devs group. And
on Meetup, will the other two be closing, or will that be how you announce what the topic is?
so probably not. We're still working that out, but we feel like right now the kind of surface level discussions seem to make sense to kind of have them maintain their own accounts still, and we may find a way to kind of pool all this information into one. We'll get there, but I think that's where we're at. So. Channeling my inner Steve Jobs. One more thing. Oh, wait, there's more. So, talking about the big events. This has been something I've wanted to put together for a really long time, and it's finally happening. We will have a pretty massive developer conference here in Springfield called Method, and it's going to take place on March 5th 2020, methodconf.com. Earlier this morning, I was alerted there's still a bunch of spelling errors in there. Sorry. But if you want to go there and sign up for details, they're going to be coming out pretty heavy, pretty quick. This date is coming up sooner every day, and it's looming, but it's going to be freaking awesome. The idea here is not to be any one topic, but strictly development related. We're going to have some workshops, two half-day workshops that you can split out into, or there'll be a main track with a lot of really cool stuff presented. We're intentionally not saying a lot about this just yet because we're really happy to have the DevFest group allow us to come and talk about our first round of speakers. And trust me, you probably don't want to miss that information because it's pretty damn exciting. And they also gave us a discount code for y'all, so I believe this is $10 off the current price if you want to go get tickets for September 20th, discount code method. And that's actually all. No one more thing after that. If there was any questions, I'm happy to.
Can you take a check from O'Reilly now?
Yep. We can take a check from O'Reilly now. Happily.
Take 2 checks if they got them.
Yeah, that's right. Roll it up in checks now. The rest of the night, Tom and I are going to get up here and do something pretty crazy. Is anyone like really excited to see how to like take a website from beginning to end? Like if it's not your like everyday thing that you do and you kind of already know that jam, like maybe not so much. But like I have a feeling there's a few people in here who probably don't know what that process looks like. And so this is more of an advanced end of the vision for that kind of beginner level stuff, because this is in no way going to be like super beginner, but the idea is to see that process all the way through. I remember like it was yesterday, the first time I launched a website, it was for some photographer, and it was hosted on GoDaddy, and I just had no clue how to like do the DNS stuff. Like I've got this site on my computer, how do I get it up to the server? And how do I get the domain pointed at it? Like it was just so lost on me. And I can remember being on the phone with GoDaddy support, and they were talking like a freaking moron, which is true. But so this is that kind of stuff. Like really want to guide people, seeing this whole process. And so tonight's going to be an interesting take on that. And unfortunately, we had a really big kind of intro here, so time is going to be tough. If we do run over, which I'm not promising won't happen, you feel free to step out if you have to. This is going to be a lot of thick stuff, but hopefully kind of fun, kind of a dual approach to this. So come on up, Tom. Let's do this business.
Miranda had an announcement tonight.
Oh my gosh. Miranda, please. Yes. And awesome. Yeah. My gosh.
Hey, I'm Miranda. I co-founded an organization called the Geek Foundation, and just in a nutshell, our goal is to help more people learn how to code with an emphasis on increasing diversity. And we've done a lot of work so far working with kids. We've got Girls Who Code clubs started in different organizations and schools around the area, and we're working with our Coder Dojo clubs too that are for all kids. But we really want to move into teaching adults next. And so what we think is going to make the most impact for a broad swath of people is to teach some WordPress basics. So we're basically thinking about having a monthly meetup to teach beginners WordPress concepts, basic WordPress concepts. So no one on our board is overly familiar with WordPress. I know it's dangerous, but probably not enough to build a curriculum. So what I'm looking for is some people who have some WordPress experience. You don't have to be a pro, but just enough to be able to help us form a curriculum around this thing. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. If you can't find me after this or something, you can check out thegeekfoundation.org on our website, and you can submit the contact form or give the email address. Thank you.
Yes. And did Charlie run out? He's like WordPress Uber guru.
He did just tell me he's trying to get back into the community.
Exactly. You heard it here, folks. Oh man, so this is gonna be a wild time. So settle in.
You have the screen share set up? You're good.
Okay, I'm good. So what we're gonna be building? Oh man, I have my stuff up. Edge. There we go. All right. So what we're gonna build is the new Springfield Devs website. So
This just happened.
Yep, push it live. So this is, like I said, going to be a new exercise here. We'll see how it goes. Tom is here to kind of commentate and do some other side of the things. He's going to be handling a lot of like the deployment related stuff, DNS stuff, and so he'll kind of talk about that. And then we are legitimately going to code this thing from scratch. So I got some backup notes over here just in case. I'm gonna copy pasta, and so it's not crazy boring. But here we go. So
Let's get started. So I want to kick off real quick. So just a few logistics, right? So Mike's got the design. Oh, you got to put it away. One of the first things I do with a new site is to get a GitHub repository or a Bitbucket repository. I don't know that you guys do any of that kind of work. We don't have a good way for me to share my screen, but Mike's going to kind of start pulling up a little bit of his code base, and I'm going to get a GitHub repository together for him.
Yep.
So I'm going to create a new repository, SGF devs. I don't know what all you guys shared over there. Dev. We'll make this public.
Anybody heard of Horsestrap? Anybody heard of this framework? Yeah. We're going to be using a lot of Horsestrap tonight. No documentation. The owner of the code base is lazy. So, Horsestrap. That's how you run it right there. Now the idea behind Horsestrap is quite simple, and it's kind of become just an ongoing joke. It's kind of a anti-framework, but basically it's a stub. So I felt like every time I started a website, I did the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again, even for just really simple, just testing stuff out here and there. And so I created, with the time it was with the Yeoman Generator, if anybody's familiar with that. Basically just a thing that I could type one command and it plopped out everything I needed to get started, and so that's still what it is. It's very opinionated towards my workflow, so sorry, if you're like, this is just dumb, you're right, but that's the idea. So I just ran Horsestrap, and then the line that it spit out was, run npm install and then run .NET run. So I do use .NET Core for this, but like really no .NET stuff. It's just kind of the templating language using Razor I like to work in. So try not to get tripped up on those details because it's probably about 5% of what's going on here. So you can kind of just safely ignore that. And I guess I could have been running this install while I was yammering.
You are fast. Slack is already saying SGF devs.
Oh,
unbelievable. I'm going to send you the URL for the repository. Don't we have a little folder here, a channel on Slack?
Yes, we have a Slack channel.
There we
Site
go.
from scratch.
There we go. Site from scratch.
Okay.
All right. I've already got a folder set up in there for the static deployment.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start moving some DNS things over. SGF dev currently points to and redirects to SGF web devs. I'm going to start putting some DNS stuff over at the new location. For DNS, what services do you guys use for some personal hosting, anything like that? Yeah, so Netlify for DNS too. I heard Netlify. Cloudflare is a big favorite of mine. It's a free DNS service. You use DigitalOcean? They have DNS services too? Yep. Yeah, okay. Right on. I've been using Cloudflare for a long time. They provide some interesting layers over the top of DNS. So instead of just providing DNS, they also give you some security layers where visitors to your site will actually pass through Cloudflare servers, and they'll filter bots out, spam out, bad traffic out, and that kind of stuff. So they provide quite a bit of value in a free DNS service. It's pretty impressive. So I've been using them for a number of years. I'm moving over to, so one of the other services that we use for hosting, you guys may use DigitalOcean. I can't show you. So you,
Should have had that split screen.
I know. We couldn't figure it out in time. It was a pretty hectic day. So for hosting, a lot of people might get traditional hosting on GoDaddy or whatever. If you have a static site where it's just HTML and JavaScript and CSS, I can't brag about a service called Netlify enough. Write it down, find out, get a URL, get an account. For static site hosting, it doesn't get any better than that. And it's really free hosting for a lot of your personal stuff. Netlify.com. Netlify. So, anyway, so I'm setting up, I'm going to set up some Netlify stuff over here, and I'll point our Cloudflare DNS over to Netlify to prepare for hosting.
So the general workflow that we're going to do here is we got kind of this weird amalgam of setup, kind of a hybrid of traditional server rendered stuff with more of what you would see in more of like a single page application with that kind of hot reloading. So when you're making a change in your code, like the web just, the site updates. We kind of got some of that action in here. So this lovely horse here that you're looking at is represented by, you know, this markup right here. I'll try and zoom in a bit. And so the general workflow that I'll get into here is very often come in here, do some stuff, save, and flip right back to the browser to see what happened. And when I'm doing front end stuff, that's really how I like to work, right? Save, check, save, check, save, check. Just make sure it's doing what I'm expecting it to as early and often as possible. So if I just remove that and hit save and come back over here, it refreshes into nothing, right? So that's kind of the workflow. I hit save, come back, this thing, awesome. All right, so let's talk about just a little bit of kind of how this breaks down. I know the folders are incredibly hard to see, but I just kind of want to give a rough idea of how this is structured and also point out that it really doesn't matter. So it's structured how I like it to be. Really, we've got this pages folder, and this is a Razor Pages concept, so this is a .NET thing. So don't concern yourself a whole lot with it. There's this layout file here, and basically this is HTML with just a couple of special things in there, right? So it's got like this render section, like that's not an HTML thing, right? But otherwise it's 95% HTML. I think we'll know what's going on. The way this breaks down is we'll be doing everything in this index file. So think of this as just a blank, empty old file, and we'll go ahead and update this to our lovely new title. So, all right, let's dig in. First thing is, and I'm sorry if some of this gets boring, just kind of hang out for the ride, I guess. But the first thing I do is start getting all of these images out of here, right? So I'm using Sketch here. If you're not familiar, it's just another graphic design tool, layout tool, whatever. Like as a developer, I'm using this to take designs the designer has given me, and now I'm able to start execute that work, right? And so the first thing is start exporting these things. So in Sketch, I just highlight the layer, come down here to make exportable, and then there's all sorts of options about how you're going to export that. And most of the stuff is going to be SVG, and wait. All right, there we go. So I'm gonna save that. We got this nice city shot here. I'm gonna make that exportable. You can notice maybe down in the bottom right that like this is blue here. So he's got this nice blend mode thing going on here. But then when it exports, it's gonna be the regular color of the photo. That is not an SVG. Export that again. We got this flag down here. Also not an SVG. So there's these icons down here. One of the things I like to throw in Horsetrap, again, is all of the stuff that I'm doing all the time, right? And these freaking icons. So Font Awesome is included by default. So you can just, there's a few lines that are commented in there. You uncomment them and you have access to all the Font Awesome. And I think that's about it. So like even that little paper airplane thing there, and these things, I'm not going to export these as images. I will get that heart though. Okay, so I think that's all of the exporting that needs to happen, and so now it's all about, when I'm working, you may like to do it differently, but I like to write all of the, or most of the HTML first, so I kind of get that representation of just the layout and not necessarily be too concerned about the styling, but it's kind of a hybrid approach as well. So I've kind of analyzed this a little bit. I ran through it once today, and I feel like I've got a decent, an okay mental model of what this, you know, layout represents. And so there's going to be a bit of Flexbox usage in here, and because of that, sometimes you need to wrap things so you can put a display flex on the parent, and so the children in there can flex out. So there's a few kind of wrapping instances in here. So first things first here, kind of get these two sections going in here. And so, you know, with everything we do tonight, there's going to be a million different ways to slice this.
I still use divs. I have a hard time going sections.
Yeah, so whatever. Because this could get heated real quick. And so I'll kind of treat this, you know, as my left one, and this as my right one, basically. And in here, I'm gonna just do another quick little wrap, and then need to create that logo. So just kind of again dressing this stuff up. I'm gonna link that to the home page. The formatting on this editor sometimes. Images. Logo.svg.
While he's doing that, I've already set up Cloudflare to point to Netlify. If anybody could check, one of the things that I did on the DNS, DNS has called a time to live. So when you go to a domain name, your browser kind of caches the address. So it's like a domain name is basically just a pointer to an IP address, right? You guys are familiar with IP addresses? So anyway, when your browser hits a domain server and wants to know the IP address of the server to go to for a domain name, it caches that for a while, right? And all the other servers around the internet cache that. So I have made the changes necessary on our DNS to point sgf.dev to the Netlify account. There's really not much there, but can anybody verify?
It says hello world.
It does say hello world. Okay, so that basically is proof that the core work is done, right? So DNS is pointing to the new server. HTTPS is working. So Netlify was really nice about went ahead and automatically configured an SSL certificate for free. So really, we have a GitHub account or a GitHub repository that has an index.html file in it. Netlify checked that out, pulled it down, created an SSL cert, and we just pointed the DNS to it. So pretty.
Yeah. So thanks for pointing that out, Fred. No, it's intentional and it is weird. I meant to call it out. So if I just put 1 in here, if I start typing @ notice like some weird stuff starts to come up. Like, why is that? @ is a special character in Razor. It lets you get into C# mode. So if you're familiar with something like PHP, you know, where you need to start doing something like that, you've got to kind of wrap that in some sort of encasement. Well, what's really nice about Razor pages is it's just @ and then you start getting in there. So it's just a syntax that's way better. But then when you need to type an @ symbol, what do? Well, you just type another one. So that gets you out of there. So I'm just kind of just going down this design document here. I've got this image in there. I've got the H1 in there for the hello world. Just put some paragraph text in there. Started a form. Could save this and see the refresh version of this. So kind of start to see this content coming together. Tom, it's awesome when you take your little chat breaks. So anytime.
My little chat breaks anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, Netlify's awesome. Wait. The majority of the things that I need to do are really taken care of at this point. I can do some production work for you, Mike. I can get some graphics out, but I think that your workflow is going to go a lot faster than what I'll be able to produce for you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we'll just keep going here.
Yep.
So just addressing some things here. So I've got this input field on there, and now we're at this button that's got this icon in there. And so this is some of where I like to start bringing in those icon font libraries. So instead of putting an image, you can simply put something like this, right? This iTag is what they've adopted, and then you just throw these classes on there. And so right now, if I save that, it won't do anything. But if I go into my assets, SAS, and my vendor, so this is the first any bit of CSS that I'm touching, and really the only thing I'm doing here is I'm using SAS. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a way just to do a little bit more stronger CSS. So you can use things like variables, and you can nest things down so you don't have to manually type out so much. It's the only thing it's doing. At the end of the day, it's all CSS, so it's really just some kind of syntactical sugar on top of that. So in my vendor setup here, I've got this main folder here ready to uncomment for all of Font Awesome, right? So if I hit save and I've done everything right now I've got, not that paper airplane, but I've got that envelope in there. And to get that airplane, it's just something else. If anybody really wants to go look it up and tell me what it is, it might just be plain. We can try that.
The airplane?
Yeah. So instead of envelope, let's just try plain. Nope. There's another one.
I'll look it up.
Okay. We'll leave it as envelope for now. So keep trucking along. So I've reached kind of this point in the document, and now I'm kind of ready to tackle, what is, I guess, kind of the footer of this site. Paper dash plane? All right. Almost had it. There it is. Woo! So I'm gonna zoom out and see where I'm at here a little bit. Ooh.
You're practically done.
Yeah, exactly. Content. Just put the logo or sorry.
One of the things that always surprises me, I giggle a little bit by saying you're practically done, but surprisingly, with modern HTML and modern CSS, he's pretty close on the HTML side,
Right.
Back in the day, right, we had a lot of divs, a lot of heavy stuff, we'd add a lot of classes and a lot of additional things to be able to mark up. With modern CSS, I think that you'll see that Mike's going to have a really pretty clean, pretty slim set of HTML here. Most of it's actually going to be CSS at the end of it.
So we got Twitters.
You guys ever go to CSS Zen Garden?
Yeah.
Is that still a thing?
Old.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still around, but it's pretty cool when it was.
Yeah, so CSS Zen Garden was, probably late 90s, early 2000s maybe when it kind of came out. And none of us really knew what you could really do with HTML, but some people did, right? Anyway, so it's basically one set of HTML that users contributed only CSS for. And it's still there. It looks like they're still cranking out designs, pretty modern designs, where you can see these really just, I wish you could see some of this.
Sorry.
Right, so somebody provided just CSS for the same markup, right? And you can see that there are actually 3D transitions on it. Oh, yeah.
Gosh.
It's not going to work that way. But, it's the same HTML code base that everybody else started with. That was the site that we used to use back in the day to realize, what it meant to have good semantic markup. And then really just to do most of your work in the CSS. CSS Zen Garden, it's still out. It looks like it's still active.
Like people are making updates to
I
it still?
can't tell what the dates are on some of these, right? I can't tell exactly what the date was that some of these were submitted, but with some of the 3D transforms and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's relatively modern.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is roughly, I may find that something's kind of junked up here, but I mean, in its purest form, this is the markup. So you could argue that some of the stuff in there wasn't totally semantically correct or whatever, but I mean, it is a pretty minimal form of what it means to mark this up. There's, coming straight down, we've got a section, stuff inside there, stuff inside there. If we take a look at, so this is fully responsive design, and you can see when we get down to mobile that this kind of shifts up a bit, right? This thing goes from the side to being up top, and so yeah, we'll start to get to a lot of this stuff now. I know I've got all this hierarchy for these files and how to organize stuff, and I know you can't see them very well, but basically I have main buckets of animations, base. There's a folder in there, if you can see it, called deprecated. Another one called modules, pages, utilities, and vendors. And this is actually something that we kind of constructed as a team over at the Marlin Network, and I've brought it with me. But yeah, this was kind of the stuff that we did all the time, right? And so it made sense for things to be organized and placed. Yeah, you're still not going to see those folded. I don't know how to make them bigger, but that'll be good. Good for the code. So really the way that I like to work for actual websites that are designed in a proper way is to put like 80% of the stuff in modules. And really this idea is that it's one cohesive unit that you can have one SCSS file or one kind of CSS namespace that represents that thing. This is just one way to work. There's many ideologies, and I'm disconnected now. A lot of different ways about how to organize this stuff, and people get really religious about it really quick. I'm not that way, so I mean, I welcome any critique or anything like that, and hopefully you can take away some from me as well. So let's start styling. Having gone off on that soliloquy there, I'm just basically going to post everything in this one file. So this is a small enough thing that who really cares, right? Like the maintainability of this is not going to be anything challenging, at least at this point. So we're going to dump everything in here. And it'll go pretty much like in the order that we've kind of written this. And you'll see here maybe kind of that something popped up there as I started typing. So I'm using the JetBrains editor the writer editor from JetBrains. And they've got really awesome editors. And so one thing this did is it figured out, like, I've got some markup called site wrapper. Is that what you were intending here? And so it kind of gives you that stuff, and it's pretty neat. So the first thing is we kind of want to get the separation going, right? Right now it's all just stacked on each other, and we want to kind of get it to take up 50% on each side. And so, one way to do this is going to be to use Flexbox, and we'll set the minimum height of this container to 100 VH, which is a viewport height. So if you've ever been in the situation where you need it to be like as tall as the screen, like that used to be pretty hard to pull off. You'd have to like do some absolute positioning and just some weird stuff because it didn't really know how to grow like that. So let's just kind of see what this starts to do. So this starts to get at that, like that by default Flex is going to push things horizontal. And so what we've also done here, if we take a look at this, if we were to say background red, we should see that those sections now are taking up that full width there. But what we really wanted to do is be 50-50 split, and so where we've got this white space out there, we want it to take up all of that room. So let's just keep going here, and we'll comment that out because we might want to come back to it. Flex this to 1, and I think that will start to give us what we want? Yeah. So by telling it the Flex 1 shorthand is basically telling it, take up equal amounts of room. All the children in here take up that equal amount of space. And so naturally what it did is gave us like a 50-50 split on this. And so this kind of stuff before, this looks really simple and really not that much to it. We did it in just a few lines of code. But like doing this previously was a bear. And so like having these tools at hand now is just so freaking nice. And I find myself not really ever using any of the old stuff anymore.
You guys saw it. I was a little bit behind because I was setting up some of the Cloudflare DNS. You saw that he had the 2 sections in there. Was that clear? Because I know the image doesn't show up exactly full width yet, but I wanted to make sure you could see that 50-50 split was where the image aligned on the on the left-hand side there. But then it was in the middle of that section over there. It was on the side of that section.
All right. So I'm just kind of adding some padding in here now, getting that away from the edge. Sorry, look at something here. These lights are throwing me off now. Got this new keyboard that I'm not used to. It's all clicky and all that fun stuff. And it has these nice lights on the keyboard, but they don't light up all the characters on there, so I can't always see all this. It highlights the number, but I can't see where the dollar symbol is, and I'm not that good with a keyboard, so anyways.
Hey, Mike.
Yo.
Someone was texting me saying that the video feed is frozen.
Dang it.
Oh, the camera.
Yeah, the camera. The video feed is frozen.
All right. These guys are gonna get on it over here. Start to get into some funky stuff here. So like Tom was explaining, getting this image to take up all of that space there. This is one of those silly things that like is so seemingly simple, and when you finally get it, it's like, oh, okay, duh, that's one way to do it. But like, it can be so frustrating to get that to work. So there's a couple different ways to do this. If we were to use like a background image approach here, that would admittedly be the easier approach because a background image is naturally going to like fill this space and not try and push the screen down at all. And when you're dealing with images, you have aspect ratios that need to be taken into consideration. And so semantically, and this thing should be an image tag as opposed to just a decorative background image. Background image is really good for like texture or things like this, but when it's half of the freaking website, like maybe it makes sense to make that an image tag that has some alt attributes on there for screen readers and just search engine juice and all that stuff. But when you use an image tag, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So this was my approach to this whole situation. And we'll start with this object fit and set it to cover. And like usually just this one line does a lot of wonders for you. Got here. Just make sure I got this going right. Okay, yeah. And if I were to like say set the width of the image to 100%, we start to see how it starts to fill that. But guess what happened? It's an image tag, so it pushed my page down. I don't want that scroll. I want it to be, as high as the page is. And then also notice I've got this background red in there just to kind of help me see what's going on. So it's still got some just funky issues, right? So I'm also going to set the height to 100% as well for just the time being. And again, like I still got this issue going on. So this was my take on solving it. I've got the parent up here, this basically this right side child. I'm just referencing it by it being the second one. I've set its position to relative, which will then let me set the position of this guy to absolute. And then I can set its positioning to 0, and I think, yeah, that'll about get me there. So what I kept running into is just these weird, it kept bumping down, and so this absolute positioning can be nice sometimes because you can just tell it, ignore like the flow of the document, just anchor yourself up to that top left, and then just doing that absolute position like solved the problem for me. So there's other ways to do it, but that was my take on it. So Tom, what did you kind of worked on this too. Did you do?
I ended up doing a deal with 100% max height is what I did.
Yep.
And that really kind of caused it to lock in a little bit. But I had an edge case that created that I didn't like either. That when the content of the entire page wasn't quite 100% high, or when the content on the left-hand column was long, I ended up with a gap into the image and all
Yep.
that. And I think that this will fix that.
Yep, I had that same. I did the same thing. This stupid gap, and it
Yeah.
gave a scroll bar, and it was just silly. So just did a little trick here with some CSS. So it's hideous right now, but I like to be dramatic like that when I'm testing things out. And so that parent, what I did was give it a background color. One, for troubleshooting purposes, and two, because it will serve a purpose. If I set this image now that is inside of that parent, set that blend mode on it. This is how you set it on an actual element. You can set it on background images as too with a different property. But now the cool thing about this is I kind of get that power that those image editors have, right? So where they just able to set that blend mode stuff on there. So now you can actually come in here and like change that color that interacts with that image. So any kind of color we want to get in here, we can start to achieve. And so that's really cool, especially if you're like turning something over to a client and giving them some sort of management system for them to control this kind of stuff. They can find that to be really powerful. It was roughly the color of the image that was out there.
So you guys are seeing Mike work, right? So he's got one screen that he's working on that you guys are seeing. So he's making edit changes, and then really the screen he's flopping to the browser, right? Flopping back and forth. And obviously his workflow regularly is going to have his code in one screen and the site in another, and he's seeing those changes happen in real time. A question that I have for you, Mike, is, one of the things that I do often is when I don't quite know how I'm going to tackle a problem, is I'll actually just leave it open in the browser, right? And I'll basically just add styling directly to an element in the browser so I can quickly see how's this going to affect it. How often do you do that? Do you do that kind of work, or do you almost always do it like code on a screen and then browser in another and work exclusively in the code?
Very often. I don't know that I could quantify it in a specific amount, but you're not seeing. So I ran through this website today. It was the first time I started messing with it. And yeah, I mean, half my time was in there like futzing with, the inspector here as I was doing, just kind of messing around with doing that. But yes, very often it'll come to stuff that like I can't quite remember. Was it align items or justify content? And one of the nice things about these browser tools is it gives you all of that. So it's being funny. Weird. There we go. Like if I wanted to set the display of this, like I can see, what it does just by kind of coming around in here and messing around with different things. And I don't have to worry about that affecting my code. It's just doing it in the browser. And so that allows me to play around with a lot of things. So yes, if I don't know exactly what I'm writing and I need to play around, and especially with positioning to see how it breaks stuff, yes, all the time.
It's a really cool way to experiment with the CSS if you don't quite know how you're going to tackle a problem. One of the issues that I run into when I use that approach, though, is that I'll finally get to the point where I've solved my problem, but I may have forgotten several of the steps that I took to get there, right?
Yep.
Right, so I ended up with, I changed the parent class, and I changed this, and I changed the child, and I went all the way to the top level parent. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of get that relationship. That's perfect. And I can't reproduce, all those steps all the way. So, admittedly, you have to kind of remember what you did, and then you start recreating that in the code. Anybody have is there a good way to compare like a state that you've changed, so you can see all the things that you've done?
Yeah, in your browser there should be, at least I'm pretty sure it's in Chrome, but I know for sure it's in Firefox. There is a tab in your section on the right where you're doing your changes that you can click on changes, and it will show all of the changes, and you can copy them.
Just the things that you've changed?
Just the things you've changed, yeah.
Get out of here.
Oh, come on, that's
You
brilliant.
didn't know?
No.
If you click on that, I don't know if it's in the Edge, if it's in
Chrome?
Microsoft Edge preview, but generally it'd be under the two arrows that are on the right next to dot breakpoints. But it'd be, at least in Firefox, it'd be around there.
Oh, Firefox. What?
Yeah.
I use Firefox.
Well, Firefox is superior. I am using Edge, but it is effectively Chrome. So, yep.
Well, that would be
I don't know
phenomenal.
if Chrome has that feature.
Clearly not.
Let me check.
God.
Well, Chrome has a nice feature too, though. So one of the things that I've done before related to that is that you can visit a website and you can select an element on that website, and you can ask Chrome to give you all of the CSS that is applying to that element, and it'll basically break down the whole chain that affects that particular element at that time. So maybe it can do the.
So it is Firefox Developer Additional.
Yeah.
So I propose a meetup on inspect and all the neat things that.
Oh.
That's
Yeah. I like that. For sure. I am stealing some font files. Okay, we can talk about something cool here in just a second, hopefully.
I'm still looking, but there's a way in Chrome to go to sources and then local modifications.
Oh, yeah, you could also go to, in Chrome, you could go to the inline style sheet.
Just an inline style sheet?
But I think that will only pull the
Yeah,
inline
that's
style
just
sheet
inlines
because-
though, right?
Yeah, I don't know a good way to do it in Chrome. But
There's a right-click option here. So if you go to sources on a file, that's not great either. You can see local modifications to just that file,
the problem would be if you're editing.
especially if you've got a web map or something like that to several files. I don't know how it would display some of that.
Yeah. Just use Firefox Developer Edition. It's great.
I may give it a shot just for that.
It's got a lot of really good dev tools that aren't in a normal version of Firefox.
So the other day, this discussion came up of using variable weight
Oh
fonts.
yeah, fonts, variable fonts.
Yep. So this gets pretty font nerdy, and I'm honestly not even part of that club. But this is really cool. Oftentimes, when you're working with a design, there's several different weights of fonts that are used, and it can rank up into the 6 to 8 different, subtle different weights and kernings and blah blah. And to load each one of those fonts, takes a little bit of hit on the load that you are pulling down from that site. And so if you've got a lot of fonts, it could be a decent hit, to pulling that down. Load time slows down. And so these variable fonts, pretty interesting. It's one font file that lets you state any weight in there, and you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. Change to, what's that website, Tom?
v-fonts.com. If you guys want to waste several hours of your life playing around with something, go to v-fonts.com. Some of the things that you can tweak on these fonts and have rendered immediately are phenomenal.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yep. And then it gets really crazy when they do.
No, yeah, but get down into.
Yeah. It's down at the bottom where they. Well,
Yeah, some
Anyways,
of them on the bottom, especially when you get into some of these with the outlines.
Yeah.
They get crazy.
changing to icons.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Oh,
Anyways,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, look at Tiny. You see Tiny on there?
Tiny. Yeah. Look at that. Craziness. Yeah. So, anyways, this is nowhere near as fun as that, but this is variable font. Source Sans Pro. Adobe has it out on GitHub. It's free. So you can also get it on Google Fonts, which is where most people get most of the fonts. But you have to get every weight, and so you have to get that network hit. So based on timing here, there's a bit more left here, and we start getting into the weeds with things. So I'm going to kind of just leave this unstyled a bit and wrap up with this form submission, and we'll get this pushed up so at the very least the form submission is working. And wanted to just touch on that really quick. Using a service called Zapier. And if we take a look, at the setup, it's pretty awesome. So we're using MailChimp to handle, any submissions coming in. And of course, MailChimp has an API that you can pull down, and several different ways to get data into MailChimp. But I've found myself just wanting a much simpler solution to work with all these different services. And so I've been using this a ton lately, is this webhook inside of Zapier. And what Zapier does is it basically allows you to connect services to services. So if you have like a Google Sheet that you update some data in and you want that to get funneled into another service, it'll do it automatically, right? And you're in control of how this works. And so they've got hundreds of services that they work with. But what I found myself doing a lot is using this webhook. So from my site, I can push data to Zapier and tell it to push it somewhere, right? So in here, all I do is get this URL, so they give you this URL to push stuff to, and then down in here you can go set up your MailChimp details, Springfield Devs. You can here's the field. It'll detect what fields you push into it. So of course I just have email, but if there were more here, like it would have name, address, whatever, and you can use those as things. So that's subscriber email, and then tell it to add it to the Springfield Devs mailing list. It took no time at all to set this up, and so really the only thing I need to do now is put this URL up here. Where's the form? Tell the form to post there, and then I know it's Java, it's jQuery, but cut me some slack. I still use it quite a bit. So I'm just gonna paste a bunch of this. It's really just a lot of ceremony here, like checking if it's a valid email address, and really all I'm doing here is grabbing that email address value there by really just grabbing the email ID and grabbing the value, check to make sure it's a valid email address, and then using jQuery post, and then getting the attribute name action, which is the URL that it's going to, serialize the form data, even though there's only one field, whatever. And then I'm setting the email field to blank, and then using this Sweet Alert library just to give some feedback on what happened, and then preventing the default action when submitting that form, so that way it doesn't try and refresh the page or anything like that. So with any amount of luck here, let's see if this works. One second. Movement of passwords. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What? Star.
Oh man. So just close your eyes for a second. I'm just gonna find this one content. Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. It's not the first time I've done that. So mailing lists, right? So I'm on this one mailing list, and like I said, with any amount of luck here, if I submit now, oof, I could spell now. Look at that, and hopefully if I refresh here, I see this mailing list update to Springfield Devs. So
Ship it.
yeah, let's ship this. All right. So a little unstyled, little, whatever. So this does generate a static site. I'm not doing, so while I'm using .NET and doing stuff like that, I could even do something like this date down here. Like, it bothers me, right? When you just have 2019 and they're like that, 2020 rolls around and that doesn't update. I'm not going to solve this problem here, but I just want to show you how I get this C# syntax right here, right? So I can say datetime.now year, save that, and I'll still get 2019. So I'm doing this to show that what I'm going to do next is build a static version of this site. So I've got basically this crawler that will run and scrub each page in there and dump out an HTML version of it. The nice thing about this is that it lets us host it pretty much anywhere. If I wanted to host the Razor Pages .NET Core version of this, I can't do that on any old web host, right? I've got to have very specialized hosting to take care of that. So this is just a horse strap thing, and it's not going to work for everything. I got this hideous page here that basically just says what's the site URL that's going to get scrubbed, what's the folder that we're going to save those files into, and so on and so forth. Things to exclude, right? So this is just basically, I don't want any of these in that generator, but if I hit submit, I should see. There's all the files.
Good.
Yep. So I'm just gonna push that up.
So when he says push it up, he's going to make a commit into the Git repository. So he's going to commit all of his changes as kind of a change set. He's done. He's making a commit, pushing it up to GitHub. Netlify is set up to automatically monitor and watch for those changes. So it should take just a few seconds after he commits. Netlify will go out, grab the new code. One of the great features about Netlify too is if you have a more complex site that has some kind of like an Angular site or a Vue site, Netlify will do your builds for you too. So instead of just checking out your static code and displaying it, if you have a build process, Netlify will run those and deploy those as well. But since this is just a static site, it's just waiting for him to make that commit, push it up, and it should just take a few seconds after he makes that change for it to become live. So impatient like me, refresh like crazy. I got part of it. No CSS.
Okay, that might be a horse bug.
Horse bug?
Yeah, I think so. Hang on. I think it's NPM. Is it CSS build?
The CSS is there.
It is?
Yeah. Interesting.
It's just got the normalize in there, so hang on. I think I just need to. Yeah. 1 sec. Hold my mouse. Oh, build CSS. Wait, branches up to date. Wait, what? Really?
You made the last commit?
Yeah, but did it? I don't think it added anything. Or did it?
Oh, git ignore maybe?
Hang on. This is fun.
I'll pull down.
We're gonna get it. Oh, wait, what?
Wait, environment production versus development?
I don't know. Let's see here. Oh, now I gotta build again. Okay. Wait, no, www, CSS, styles, CS, yeah, okay. I'm just gonna copy that damn file. 1 second. Just pretend that didn't happen, and it horse strap did awesome. Did it cache that version now?
It's usually pretty good about it.
Yeah, but I didn't do an actual build.
Oh.
Got it. Okay. Oh, man. Go submit to the mailing list and such.
I am awesome.
You are awesome. Oh, Okay, so I thought we'd be able to get to the end of everything. We got kind of close. We didn't get to the responsive stuff, so.
It's pretty good though, like
Yeah.
it is, right? So I mean,
Sure.
even without going fully responsive, you get certainly down to a small size tablet
Right.
before it gets uncomfortable.
Questions?
Where do you set the weight of the variable font?
Yep.
CSS, right?
Exactly right. So what you would do normally is what you do now. So if I look at this H1, hello. We got this font weight right here.
Okay.
So normally, I don't know, yeah. So normally, the way that this is work is you'd kind of have it in these 100 measurements.
Right.
And so like your normal one is 300, 400. But the interesting thing about this is you can just,
555.
right. Yeah, so like you can just keep going with this thing and it'll, so yeah. It's, you know, I don't know the mechanics of it, but as the font designer, you can do all sorts of wicked stuff. Like font weight is not the only thing you can do. You can do crazy stuff with characters and. So I'm not here because the Google Fonts has this Source Sans Pro. So, what I saw it there. Where did it go? Source Sans Pro variable font. Adobe has this out here, and so they kind of thought they'd break down how to use it. There's a download right here. You just download the zip and include it like you would any other font face, and it just works.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But there are some like upload.
Variable fonts on Google. I don't think there are any. I could be mistaken.
You have to like download them specifically.
Right.
And like they're probably not on like Adobe fonts.
There might be some in like Typekit. I honestly have no clue. I mean, it's kind of appearing to be a trend that's going to continue. So if there aren't any out on services like Typekit and such, I would not be surprised to see if they are not there incredibly soon.
You said you could download those from V-fonts, right?
So I think that I think that's just kind of a repository of, so they're kind of just showcasing a bunch.
Oh, I see.
But there's links in here to where to buy them. And so when this design was first delivered, I wonder if it's even still in here. Is it this? I think it's this. Protopo is the name of the font. And I think Protopo is on here. Nope. Or at least not here. I went to go look it up, and it was like a $1,700 price tag for them. I'm like, no, are you kidding me? So we found something, you know, that was kind of close to it. I mean, it's not totally, but kind of works. So yeah, this site will link you off where to buy these, and almost all of them say, you know, paid commercial or something down there. Font services. Ugh. There's got to be some questions. I do, yeah. So the reason is
Start.
the what?
You did start.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was super interested when they announced that, you know, they were going Chromium, and the work that I do with Hero, we do a lot of Microsoft stuff, and one of the things we've been interested in is web-based like applications acting as almost more of a desktop thing, but like completely in a browser. You know, how would this work? And so of course Edge is, you know, the standalone browser on there, and that Microsoft announced that they will be utilizing the Chromium engine in their embedded web view. And so I was really curious to see, is it really just as good as Chrome? Because Chrome is my favorite browser, but it has some things about it that annoy me, namely the Google aspect. And so I was just curious, and it works famously. Like, I've not had any issues with it, so I just kind of stuck with it, and it hasn't bothered me, which is uncommon for testing out new browsers. So I just kept rolling. Great question. Well, I guess we can kick it around here for a little bit longer. I really appreciate everyone sticking around a little bit later. So thanks.
Great job, Mike.